a little after noon time. Just really quick to talk about some trades. Sometimes I make one trade a day. Sometimes there's days that, especially on the cusp of a 9 session rally on the S&P, typically I wouldn't be very aggressive, but there were some names that kind of popped out to me, so I went and added some. I just want to kind of give a little more color on those names. So first, I'll talk about Palo Alto. I put it on the watch list this morning. I was expecting, well, actually was looking at it for possible calls into earnings. Premiums were too expensive. Had to figure some of the business from CrowdStrike would maybe start creeping into Palo Alto. Maybe they would comment about it on the conference call, which they didn't, but they did post a nice beat, a solid raise, announced a $500 million share buyback, and it almost seems like their guidance was conservative. They seem bullish for this current half, the back half of 2024. And you start looking at the chart, and I talked about it on the watch list, the gap fill around 365. So it filled that, and now you start looking, does it get to 380? Does it get higher than that? So once it started to melt a little higher, went and got some lotto calls. And not that I think it's going over $400 this week. I mean, it'd be nice, but the premium should start to creep back into those calls. So I was looking at 395s, 400s, 405. So I went with the 400s. They seem to have the most volume as well. So liquidity is good if you want to try and get an exit. Uh, got those. Stock broke over 370. Locks them in to cover costs just a little bit ago. I actually put them up at a double. So not saying, there's things that I do sometimes, and especially on weekly options and on a name that might be volatile. The instant I get in, I automatically go back and put a limit in to close out for 100%, because a lot of times on the weekly strikes, especially when there's more time to expiration, I tend to look to close some of those out to cover costs. I did that, and all of a sudden I hear ding ding, and then it showed that I closed them out. And a lot of times when you do that, you get closed out on the ask, right? So not saying bid or ask, it doesn't matter too much, but maybe you get the best price, and maybe the stock pulls back after you get filled. So just a little pro tip there, I guess you would say. So that's Palo Alto. I'll hold the rest. I mean, it's sitting here at 374. You start doing the math, so like a name like CrowdStrike, which lost almost 50% of its valuation on that whole fiasco. It's recouped a lot, but it's still down 30%. It's a $60 billion company now. It used to be over nearly $100 billion. Where's that $40 billion of valuation go? And you look at Palo Alto, it's one of its main competitors. Do they get some of that business? Does that add $20 billion in market valuation to Palo Alto? A lot of it doesn't look baked in, considering the moves. And so that's kind of the thought process. And once it started moving higher today, that's when I went and got those calls. Not saying it's gonna run to $400, but if it gets to 380, 385 tomorrow or Thursday, those calls should be up substantially. So I'll continue to hold those. And the good thing is riding risk free. So the best way to hold positions that expire at the end of the week is to have them risk free, or you lock some of those in. And then take a look at CrowdStrike. I mean, pretty much cut in half since the fiasco. Nice little bounce here, but still substantially off its highs. Not a name I would touch. I mean, some of these names, it's like, how do you, what valuation? How do you try and figure out how much market cap does your brand mean, right? What does it mean to a company? Is revenues, margins, cash, all that fun stuff, but what does the brand mean? And you look at CrowdStrike, and it's substantial, right? You're talking $40 billion in valuation here just on its brand sake. So impressed. Not a name I'll trade, but I put the chart. If you watch the audio later, you can see me. Let's see if I put it in the chat room. Just a pretty impressive move, and then a nice bounce too. So at some point, people write them off, pretty much say this is a dead stock's not going anywhere, and then it bounces from 200 all the way up to 270 or so. All right, so that's the first one. Well, not the first one I made, but and then here's Redfin, and Redfin I was talking about last week. We had the housing starts come out, and it was actually weaker than expected, and despite that, all the home builders and names in that space all rallied. And Redfin's been on a tear ever since. I mean, you take a look at what it was trading a couple weeks ago. It was well, actually at the start of July, it was under $6, and here it is almost up over 50%. Up, it trades 1 times revenues, and if the market's a forward, it's one of the best forward-looking mechanisms on the planet. So it almost seems like the market is trying to price in Redfin's return. Number one, it just had earnings recently, and they talked about finally returning to profits at the start of 2025. So by the time they're a profitable company, it's not like the stock is going to react the instant it posts a profitable quarter. It's going to react before that. So I think that's some of the move here. Some of it's the short interest, and then some of it is the pent up demand for housing. And if you take a look at a name like Redfin, Redfin's has their hand in more stuff than just the online stuff. I mean, Zillow has a lot of stuff on it as well, but Redfin is in different stuff: title, insurance, brokerage. They do remodels. They have a lot of different things that they have their hands in. And if it gets to the point where it can start to return to profitability, it's going to trade many times revenues. So it's a $1 billion company now. I'm not saying I'm a uber bull on Redfin. Redfin was one of my top 5 stocks a long time ago. It ran from $17. I think it was in the hundreds, maybe higher than that at one point. And I'm not saying we're going to be in the midst of another real estate boom, but if rates keep going down, there's certainly going to be the pent up demand is going to be met with supply, right? Because folks who have low rates, as rates start to go down, might be a little more comfortable listing their house. So I think there's a lot of different moving parts. Of course, I wish I got some calls yesterday when it was rallying, but I look at it, I say, wow, it broke 850, and you start looking at the other levels. This can go to 11 pretty quickly. So I think that's the next target. I'll continue to hold those inexpensive strikes for possible move there. I'm not saying it's like a lotto spec trade per se, but I mean I have plenty of time. September 20th calls look pretty inexpensive. I was looking for the 12s, but then I was trying to get filled at 20, and then 25 wouldn't fill me, and then I went back and got the 1150s fill me at 3.5. So I'll just hold those. I think it heads over $10, double digits, and that's kind of like a key threshold, right? The double digits I was talking about, WW yesterday closing over $1. Like those are key, like mental. Uh, People look, investors look at those things. Double digit size. It's just a weird thing, right? It's the 99 cents difference than $1, right? Someone rather pay 99 cents for a piece of candy than $1. It's just how it is, right? It's all that game. All right, so that's Redfin. And here's the longer chart on Redfin. So I didn't put this in the room, but I mean, you start looking. I'm not saying it's going back to, 30, 35, 40, 40, but I think there's definitely room for, and then the shorts, the folks who have shorted a name down, if they find to figure out, hey, this is not going much lower, then they'll just start to cover. And not that they'll short squeeze, but that might be help that, that might help put some fuel in the fire. So that's Redfin. So Roku, I put in a watch list this morning. I'm back in some strikes. You start looking at what's going on, and I talked about TTD on the rant this morning, and then the watch list trades 25 times revenues. Roku's 2.5 times revenues. Somewhat similar business model now that Roku has turned from, they're an advertising platform. That's how they make their money. They don't make their money selling products much anymore. They make their money monetizing their users and their user base. So as the user base grows, uh, they get folks to sign up for all the different a la carte services too. They make a cut from that, but the main basket of their revenue is from advertising. So just have to think. You start reading through TTD earnings, that just bodes well for Roku. I might look for some later strikes as well. I'm going to be patient here today, and then if it holds its ground tomorrow, I might look for some from more strikes to play for further upside. And then last but not least here is AMD. And I was looking at it yesterday all the way down to 148. I passed on getting the calls, and of course I get it when the stock's trading over 160. Not saying there's tipping point moments in AMD, but the fact that they've done 2 acquisitions in the AI space, it's kind of the stepbrother of Nvidia. And if people start looking for a catch-up name, and I've traded Dell for quite some time based on that premise, I think AMD can offer that as well. I was looking for a possibility. So the calls, I'm sitting there and I'm like, do I want to put a stop in and cover? But I think if it holds 156 here, markets have, we're up 98. Well, we'll see what happens today. But this big winning streak, at some point we're going to pull back, right? It's going to happen, or some consolidation. And just the fact that we're only down 0.2% on a SPY, I mean, it feels like much more because some of the names that you trade over the last couple of weeks are taking hit for, blocks down nearly 2%, some of it based on the crypto names. Baidu's down a little bit, down 2% here. But maybe we have a reversal here tomorrow or Thursday. So I'll just continue to hold those strikes for upside. And that's it, folks. I'll be back on in about 2 hours. Let's have a great couple hours here. I'll be back on later. Rock and roll.